everybody to another live edition of the Rock Pile Report podcast. I love that you all got to watch the wind-up if you were in the room, but you probably weren't. Guys, we are here, and it is roster discussion.
It's football time!
It's football
time!
It's here. It's back. We're back in the building. It's live. Things are going on. We are finally able to take a deep breath and just accept the fact that the summer is over. Guys, I'm your host, Bill Season Ticket Holder Drew Gear. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. To my left is Ryan Lasal.
Season ticket holder, Ryan Lasal.
Season ticket holder, Ryan Lasal. Chris, let's take a look here.
Hold on.
Hold on now.
Hold on. You love a commitment to the bit.
To the bit? All right.
To the bit.
What do you got for me?
It is football season, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. I got my gold chain.
Oh, no.
Oh, man.
There
Where
we go.
did you get this?
Amazon, $13. I got my Bobby Babbage gold chain on. Get your gold chain on.
Guys, it has been announced that Bobby Babbage is going to be calling defensive plays as if we didn't know that already.
Does this help?
Right? Like, does it almost seem a little bit like...
Does this help if I
Oh,
go?
my God.
Woo!
Oh, my God.
This,
Folks, this
full
is sex
Babbage?
appeal right now. You've gone full Babbage.
am I full Babbage?
You've gone full
It is
Babbage.
Friday night. Why are we not live at Caputi?
Chris, leave some ladies for the rest of us, man.
Guys, if you didn't already know, this podcast is a train wreck wrapped up inside a burrito of alcoholism, but man, is it fun.
Ooh.
Guys, we are here tonight talking about the 53-man roster. We're talking about a lot of things. First of all, I want to start the show by saying this. This week, Fisher-Price launched a new collection of the Little Tykes toys.
Yeah, man.
Ryan, I know you and I love you, and you are a memorabilia guy.
I am.
I'm a guy who doesn't like clutter, and I'm very utilitarian. So I refuse to own anything. I'll put some pennants on my kids' walls. I want things for them, right? But I personally don't take any value in memorabilia. So as someone who does, and whose office is decorated with a lot of Bill's stuff, you have helmets, you have signed posters, you have all kinds of stuff. When you look at those Fisher-Price toys, what's your first thought?
I think my kids would enjoy them.
Perfect. And so do you yourself have one on a shelf somewhere inside your home?
No.
Okay.
No.
So I want to walk you both through something and get your opinion. And those of you in the comments who joined us tonight, look at that, Ryan Tongan. I hope everyone is welcome. Let's see if Drew agrees.
I think it depends on how many drinks in we get. Ask us later, Ryan.
Ask me in 15 minutes, because I'll tell you what. Here's what happened to me at a restaurant. I had bought a box of the Little Tykes toys, and I had just immediately given them to my children.
Sure.
To play with.
As one
now,
does.
one of them is an infant, and one of them is 2 at the time, 2.5 change. But I gave them to them to play with, and they destroyed the box almost immediately, and then proceeded to carry the toys around, chewing on them. So we're now out at a restaurant. We're sitting here, and this guy at a table across from us, he's got to be older than me, probably in his mid-40s, there with what I assume, I didn't see a wedding ring, so I'm assuming a girlfriend, and a bunch of other adults of similar age who look to be coupled up. And the guy can't stop making comments. Have you ever done this thing where you're in a crowd and you make comments, Chris, where it's like, well, I can't believe that guy's doing that. And you're saying it just loud enough that you hope he hears you.
Sure.
Like you're saying it like you think you're having a conversation with the people next to you, but you're saying it loud enough that guy might hear you.
Right.
And he's going, those are collectibles, and I just can't believe that children are allowed to play with these and just destroy their value and blah, 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 blah. And it sent me 0 to 60 because that's a toy. Does it not say Fisher-Price on the box? And yet you're going to sit here and chide me because I gave it to a child? And you can't imagine someone giving a collectible like that to a kid to just mar up and destroy its resale value. Words that literally came out of this asshole's mouth. So I responded in kind. You know I'm petty.
Of course.
I responded in kind by turning to my wife and very loudly having a conversation about, hey, do you know what type of a virgin you'd have to be to care about what little kids are doing with their toys when you're 40? And just started going off about what a loser you would have to be to criticize an adult giving a toy to a child in any scenario. If you're an adult holding a toy that you are not willing to hand over to a child, you're kind of a loser. And to watch how uncomfortable that whole table got was amazing.
Sure.
So in the wake of this latest wave of Fisher-Price toys that were released, I saw that there were grown adults waiting at like 2 a.m. for these things. What are we doing? Can we just talk about how did we get here as a fan base and as a society?
Yeah, that's a tough look.
Guys, I love the Bills just as much as anybody else.
What's the resale value on those?
I
doesn't make sense.
Supposedly on Twitter, there were people that were saying that there were some on eBay for as much as like $70, like right after they went on sale. And then people immediately commented back like, well, there's a whole end cap of them over in East Aurora if you really want one.
Yeah, if you're really that hard up, just go get one, you idiot. I just see, well, what is it? Ring of Edwin in the comments. Yeah, Andy from Toy Story was quite the loser towards the end. He hesitated and giving away Woody. Listen, we all have to grow up. We can't be Peter Pan forever. This whole thing has spun me out over where we are as a fan base. How many other fan bases in the NFL do you think could announce that there would be like Fisher-Price toys made of their favorite players and people would be waiting before opening to get them?
I think more than maybe you seem to think based on your comment, because I think there's a lot. Go ahead, Chris. Chris is making a face.
Yeah, because I would be waiting in line at a grocery store with my gold chain on for a Fisher-Price set of the Oakland Raiders if Mark Davis and his haircut was a part of it.
Could you imagine him and like removable hair added to him like a Lego?
Yes.
All right. You know what?
I think what we have to remember here, and I think what it's good to keep things in context, is that the majority of NFL fans are kind of like sicko mode type of people, right?
Yeah.
Like we're the minority in the country, people that watch football. So I think just as that comes, people will buy things that are a little out there.
Sure, like preseason football tickets. Who are the people buying?
Willing to pay to go to training camp.
This is a collectible right here.
Yes, that's a true collectible.
Flutie Flakes.
Right.
It says here on the top of the November 5th, 1999.
And could you imagine the horror in someone's face if they would have watched a young Chris at 15 years old in 99?
Yeah.
Open that and dare to pour it into a bowl and enjoy it with milk.
I know a guy named Dustin who showed up after the Jeff Toole game and said, I know what we need to do. We need to exorcise the demons from this football team from a quarterback perspective. He then opened a box of Flutie Flakes, poured it into a mixing bowl, poured milk on it, and proceeded to eat it in front of us. And I'm not going to lie, everybody did flip out a little bit.
Sure.
Everyone kind of lost it. In the middle of a tailgate with this guy had literally drank in half a box of Franzia wine and then put milk on top of that.
Now that other one, Chris.
When you talk about sicko mode, that's what I think.
Which one?
The Marios.
Oh my God.
They've tried this iteration multiple times, right? When Mario Williams was the first $100 million man in the NFL.
There we go. I got a box of Marios. Somebody went to this is when I was living in Atlanta. Somebody came up to Buffalo, and I said, "Hey, get me a box of Marios," because I do have
you got Josh Jacks,
Josh Jack,
blue Flutie
and
Flakes.
blue box of Flutie Flakes. And in a box over there in the laundry room is a box of T.O.s.
Yeah, see. Sicko mode, man.
And then for those of you who can't see it, he does have a box that he can't reach over here of Josh's Jacks.
Yes.
So Chris is memorabilia. I mean, look at the tickets behind him. He keeps stuff that no one else would care about.
Yeah, I have. I have Bandits season tickets over here. I have an unfinished frame over here of tickets. These are all tickets, even to the left of Ryan Lasal.
Oh, yeah.
People have seen him in shots of the show. I save all of my ticket stubs, and I'm mad.
So you're one of the ones that got upset when they got rid of the tickets for the season for the Bills.
Yes.
Yeah. Another thing from our show earlier that we talked about
Yes.
that Pagula did away with, the memorabilia.
Can I still go to guest services and get a ticket?
Yeah, but they're just regular tickets. There's not. You remember how they used to have like each player? Remember they would do like a player for each game. They would have tickets on them.
yeah, like I got Mario Williams here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it would look like
I
this.
remember when the books would come in the mail, right? When we got our season tickets
Yeah.
delivered, they would come in the mail and you'd flip through and it'd be like, oh, the Panthers game this year, they got TO on the ticket.
So
I
I
wonder, you know.
So in 10 days, or less than that, I can get something like this at guest services.
I think so. I think this is like one of the last seasons that they're even going to allow the option for printed tickets.
So, guys, if you're listening or you're watching live, please go to guest services and ask for a paper ticket for every game. For the $5 they charge you, this is the last.
Well, you got your
hurrah.
email as a season ticket holder for the commemorative Kids Day ticket.
Yeah,
right?
they offered to sell me one for $10. I'll fight you. They also, the team sent us guys an email going, hey, as a Bills season ticket holder, you get early access to Super Bowl tickets if you want them. How dare you? How dare you ask me that now? I'll flip out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll flip this table. Guys, we're all sickos in our own way. I guess I shouldn't get down on people for caring about the things that box of Francia and milk is a Russian mafia. See, this is why I love our fan base. I love our personal fan base. You guys have nothing but great ideas. So with that in mind, we're here tonight talking about a lot of things. We're talking about Fisher-Price Little People. We're talking about fantasy football divorce, which will come up in a little bit. We're also talking about the Bills' 53-man roster and just some of our reactions to it. Now, Chris, what I love about the Cutdown is that it marks the end of the preseason process.
Yeah.
It's over. We get to wash our hands of it. And it's the final hurdle before games get played that actually means something, which is important because, like, right now, we're watching week 1 of college football here in the studio because our setup rules and most others.
Not to be confused with week 0, which was last weekend.
Yeah, where we got to watch the 10th team in the top ranked team, 10th ranked team in the nation lose an in-conference game.
And Chris bet on the over on like the first Hawaii game in forever to not hit the over.
Well, you got Delaware State going to Hawaii.
I mean, your bet was sound.
Yes,
Your bet was sound. But who could have accounted for a hurricane?
There was also weather related. There's like a hurricane thing. But I did nail the under on Tech FSU.
There you go.
Now, I want to say
Colt Brennan would never hit the under.
Colt
Brennan would never.
He can't because he's dead.
Wait, what?
Oh, yeah. You didn't hear that?
What? Good Lord.
Colt Brennan died like 40 years ago.
Hey, to Colt Brennan. Cheers.
One hell of a gunslinger.
And to Johnny Hockey.
And to Johnny Hockey. Jesus, what a week. Hey, and to Ethan Tweedy's dad. Hey, he knows what I'm talking about. Drink to that guy, too. So with this in mind, I want to be excited about the fact that we're here on the doorstep of the NFL season, but when you talk about Cutdown Day, it's bittersweet because you're still talking about mass layoffs.
Yeah.
And if you were talking about this in any other industry, it would be depressing.
Absolutely.
If you said, hey, hundreds of people are losing their job today all over the country, everyone would get mad, except it's football. So they go, well, you chose that. And
an entire company laid off 45% of its workforce
exactly.
in one day.
If you had that headline in every city in America, 45% of the workforce in this business here locally got laid off today, people would feel very differently than they do about seeing it as just NFL roster cuts.
Yeah.
And so in that way, it does feel a little weird to just sit here and celebrate and booze and talk a lot of smack about the guys who have gotten cut. So I don't want to be completely, I don't know.
Tone deaf?
Tone deaf. Let's rate.
This is Chris's house, so we won't, but let's pour one out.
Let's pour one out for all of the guys who lost their jobs this week.
Absolutely.
That dynamic aside, it's a pretty magic time.
It is. It is, because you know what it means?
And this is what a piece of
You know what it
garbage
means?
I am.
You know what it means? Football time.
It's
Football time.
Oh, am I, Chris? I am trash.
You are. We all know that. Everybody in the chat knows it.
I like that
Everybody
I lowered my
listening.
chair and you raised the camera. I don't think that you've ever picked a camera angle that makes me look fatter than this.
I actually just lowered your camera angle so that it's,
Should I lower myself? I think I feel like I'm pretty
feel
high.
like
please
you have
don't.
to do what I do and lower yourself just
Yeah.
a touch.
There you go. How about that? Is that
Just
better?
to
Is that better, Chris?
irritate- Guys, for those
We
of
probably
you,
should have done this like before the live.
a little
but
inside
do it now.
baseball, Chris
No.
hates the way I keep moving my chair up and down throughout shows, so I keep doing it just to annoy him.
Oh yeah. Because we talked about that last show, right? That you will do things just to piss people off.
Just to make everyone angry.
You don't even care that much.
I love that we have a bunch of people right now in the chat having a good time. Let's get to talking about the Buffalo Bills and the roster moves that were made. Because, I mean, realistically, when you think about what the spirit of Cutdown Day is, it's kind of a beautiful thing. It reminds you of guys that you completely forgot about.
Mhm.
You didn't even know. Remember Allen Robinson?
I do.
When we thought he
I was a
thing?
big Allen Robinson fan.
When
Fantasy
he-
football man, big Allen
The
Robinson. guy.
last time I even thought about him had to be 2-3 years ago.
You know who else was a big Allen
he
Robinson
just
guy?
got cut by the Giants.
Paul
and when
Wineski's a huge Allen Robinson fan still.
Paul Wineski of Hashtag
Of
Sports.
hashtag sports to this day. he's
When
an
I
Allen
saw
Robinson fan.
Allen Robinson got cut, I was like, I forgot that guy existed. I remember him.
You know what game I like to play when on Cutdown Day?
Huh.
Still in the league.
Still in the league. You're like, I thought that guy retired.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard his name in forever.
Joe Flacco still in the league.
We had that in the preseason finale. Jordan Matthews is a tight end.
Yeah,
Jordan Matthews, who today signed with the Eagles practice squad.
For
Tight
like
end Jordan Matthews.
Fourth time.
Yeah.
How?
He did what Kelvin Benjamin should have done.
I was just ate his way into being a tight end.
No, just admitted to the fact that he couldn't keep weight off and just lean into the fact that maybe I should just learn how to block and turn into a tight end.
I don't know why that's so funny to me, but it's like, oh, whereas Kelvin Benjamin was like, he saw Popeyes out of the corner of his eye every day leaving the team facility. And he was like, no, will it away.
Well, Kelvin Benjamin went too far the other way. He just skipped right over tight end and went to left tackle. Like he just went right past it. So he miscalculated that jump.
So here's what I love. You have that guy. Then you have guys who you go, oh, wait a minute. These guys are still like around in the conversation. David Sills the fifth is still competing in preseasons, trying to make NFL rosters. Remember when he was like behind the scenes on the Bills like embedded series?
Mhm.
They talked about how hard they tried to recruit David Sills the fifth. Where did that go?
Yeah.
Nowhere.
I thought his claim to fame was committing to USC under Lane Kiffin as a quarterback in, what, 7th grade?
Yeah. Yep.
That was his claim to fame.
And then you get to hear about guys who don't even sound like real human beings. There's a cornerback that made the roster cuts from the Miami Dolphins. His name is Duck Storm.
That's
You're
a
not
name.
real. That's clearly a creative
You're
character.
an NCAA creative
Yeah,
character.
that's a creative character. Your name can't possibly
Neither
be
is this gold chain.
You know who else wears a gold chain like that? Duck Storm.
Duck Storm. No parent is mean enough to name you Duck Storm because that just doesn't make sense.
No.
Like, that just does, like Storm already isn't a real last name. Let's name you Duck. Let's just name you Duck on your birth certificate.
And it's not Duck is short for something like Robert or Richard or something like that. No, it's just Duck. That's just his name.
Or Hodges.
Yeah.
I love that Kyle's like Drew has a backup beer. Always.
No, Kyle. What happened was Drew grabbed a new beer and then forgot that he grabbed a new beer, so he grabbed another new beer, and that's
Hey!
all it is.
Listen, I'm a
He's-
professional podcaster.
Hey, we were going to do this for the... Can you get this man a Narragansett?
Yep.
Kyle, you got it. Or Ryan,
That's your
you got
backup.
You
Whenever
gotta,
you're ready.
you gotta have the
Whenever you feel like the
Narragansett.
conversation has gotten kind of dire.
Beer of the clam.
Yeah, you can drink the beer
What
of
is
the clam.
what does sold on merit mean? Can I
Yep.
ask that?
It means just what it sounds. It's sold on merit. I don't know what that means, but it must mean something because it still
It's
exists.
still on the can.
Now, guys, when I look at the Buffalo Bills, right? Surprise moves. There are some. We've talked about a couple of them. Darrington Evans being IR'd
Yeah.
to return. Darrington Evans couldn't make last year's team. So why are they hanging on to him now?
my theory was that they're hanging on to him because he brings a new dynamic to the new return rule.
It does, but also, and I'm going to paint you guys a picture, and then I'm going to eventually have to break it down, but I'm going to kind of allude to this all night. There's a dynamic here. Darrington Evans being IR'd to return when literally all he's ever done is return.
Yeah.
That's all you've done is come back and then try it again, and you've tried to make this team, and you've tried to make that team. And now the Bills have basically said you would be on the 53 if it weren't for your injury.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little worrying, because if he's not good enough to play for any other football team for the last 4 years, why is he here?
Well, and I don't know, and you may know, I don't know enough about the new IR rule. Do the two that are designated to return, did they have to come before cuts took place?
Yes.
So
you
it's
get
kind
two
of like
free ones, but you have to do it before cuts.
So it's kind of like one of those things where who else would they have designated to return if not him? So maybe he didn't make the 53-man roster. Maybe he was just the second best option that they had to designate to return. It's kind of like, well, use it or lose it. Maybe our return guy will go down with an injury and we'll have somebody.
So I'll just fast track this to one of my hopefully broader takeaways for all of you listening to this and watching at home about this year's roster. When have you ever heard of that being a thing for a kick returner?
Well, the new kick return rule. I've talked about this with Mario and Paul
It's
on hashtag
going
sports.
to become nothing but
completely
touchbacks.
changes. That's
because no one wants to deal with it.
Empirically not true. We've seen the entire preseason.
Okay.
Return kicks went from like 15% in last year's preseason to like 76% of kicks got returned this year. And the way the rule's written, it makes it almost impossible to do a touchback, because as long as the ball doesn't get kicked into the end zone, the offensive team is punished for not trying to return it at the very least.
True.
Yardage wise, there's no benefit to fair catching it. There's no benefit to letting it roll into the end zone. So unless the kickers are kicking them into the end zone, which I don't know why you would do it, there's no reward for not returning it. And I think we've seen in the preseason, we've seen guys, if it was an actual regular season game, they might take it the distance, right? Like I can see the path to this becomes a legitimate aspect of a football game. And with that said, you're going to have a lot of teams trying a lot of different things to try to make it a thing. When would the Bills have ever traded for a returner if they didn't think that this was going to be a valuable aspect of the game? I mean, they gave up a sixth to go get a returner, right?
It's hilarious. Hang on. It's hilarious that they wouldn't give up a sixth to go get a
like a legitimate backup quarterback.
Thompson Robinson.
Yeah, Darian Thompson Robinson.
Darian Thompson Robinson from Cleveland. But they will spend a sixth on a returner no one's ever heard of.
Yeah.
Hey, I bought in as soon as I saw Kevin Masseri tweet out him returning a punt from Alcorn State and some other school that offers no players to the NFL. I'm like, oh, yeah. He's
Do
a
you
great...
want to see me have a Willem Dafoe, like, Boondock Saints meltdown right here? Bring that name up again.
Well, I think it also speaks to the fact that Daquan Hardy made a couple of bad decisions in the preseason.
A couple?
Well,
enough to make the practice squad.
Right? But enough for them to say, like, there's value here, but
you need to learn.
You need some time to learn, so we're going to go get a guy who can actually do it.
One of the most interesting dynamics of Cutdown Week to me has been this fact. Do you remember, like, 10 years ago, no one gave a damn about who was on the Bills practice squad?
No.
It didn't matter. We were worried about the roster having guys who belonged on practice squads.
You were poaching the waiver wire for guys that wanted to go on other teams' practice squads to try to get them to come to Buffalo. Like, that's who you were.
Like, hey, can we give you a starting job? Yeah. Just come here, please.
Hey, I know you got cut, but we need a left guard, like, tomorrow.
The last few years under Brandon Bean and Sean McDermott.
Yep.
I like how you're correcting me.
That's his name. Yep.
But I'm sure this is that ADHD thing where my brain is way ahead of my mouth.
Sure. I got you.
And so it's like, all right. We've gotten used to having a team that's so deep in talent that we can actually trade away pieces of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And I have a list. You go back to 2021, we traded Lee Smith to the Falcons because we were like, oh, we don't need our best blocking tight end, but we don't need him because we have Dawson Knox and we're going to have other tight ends. This guy has value. Some team wants him. Bye.
I remember when Lee Smith would have been arguably tight end 1 on this
Yes.
roster. Like that's what that's where we've come from.
And that pick went on to become Balin Spector. We traded the pterodactyl, defensive end Daryl Johnson. We traded him away to the Panthers. Since we were so deep at defensive end, we legitimately didn't need one. Then we traded Zach Moss for Nyheim Hines. And our running back depth was so solid, we absolutely don't need this guy. Let's go get a returner. And that paid some dividends. That one game.
Yeah.
We traded Cody Ford for a 5th-round pick. Chris, a 5th-round pick for Cody Ford. That they then turned around and traded away.
It's worth asking. Chris, do you know Cody Ford still in the league?
I don't think so.
Backup in the Cincinnati Bengals.
Is he still though?
He's going through a divorce. So
because he cheated on the lady he's been doing all the TikToks with.
He might have not. They might have just been engaged, but
so he not only can't block, he also can't stay in a relationship. Like, dude, you know what it is? It should have been proof he didn't understand monogamy. You just can't stick to one task.
Well, now he has more money to go get gold chains.
Gold chains like yours. I hope he gets
so
them.
Cody Ford he is the backup right guard in Cincinnati. So kudos to you, because I would have probably done a Seagrams and he wasn't in the league anymore.
2023, we traded away Boogie Basham for a meaningless late round pick from the Giants.
That still hurts, man.
Just because
that whole Boogie Basham.
Basham Creed Humphrey will be the thing that I forever just torment Greg Thompson with, because his visceral reaction to it. And he explained it to me once. He goes, the reason I get so mad at you is because I view you as a smart person. And I stopped him right there and I said, well, that's your first mistake.
Yeah, that's the first problem.
I'm a moron. He goes, I view you as a smart person. And so when I hear you say things that are dumb, I react to them with more animosity than I would if some random person were to say it or do it. And I go, yeah, but we could have had Creed. We chose not. He goes, everyone passed. I go, yeah, but it was right there.
Yeah, but you had also just signed Morse to an extension. I understand why, right? But revisionist history is way more fun.
But so
right?
you were able. So if you want to just look at what I was, kind of outlining, you've been able to trade away players every single offseason because your team is so deep. You don't need help.
Hell, they got rid of Stephon Diggs because of how deep their wide receivers are right now, right?
God damn, I hate you. So the idea is, this week, not a single player cut by the Bills got signed by another team.
Yeah.
And we didn't make we made trades to obtain talent rather than lose talent. And that should go a long way towards telling the fan base where we are as a roster and where we are right now talent-wise, at least depth-wise. Right? Because we used to have the depth where we could just sell off pieces for throwaway late round picks. It's how this year we had 5 picks after the 5th round?
Mm-hmm.
5th round, 6th round, 5 picks.
Yeah.
That's because we were able to sell off pieces because we were so deep. And now all of a sudden we're so shallow, we're the ones trading away picks.
Shallow like Cody Ford.
It's a weird juxtaposition as a Bills fan. You go, I'm not used to this. What am I seeing? And I think it says a lot about what your overall team depth is. It's also telling that when you look at the guys that we kind of signed away this week to our practice squad, the Lewis Cine thing is interesting. He was a guy that I was all over all preseason going, man, if the Vikings cut that guy or if they make him available for a late rounder because they clearly don't like him, right? Former 1st round pick. There's a reason he got drafted. He can play safety.
Absolutely. Yeah.
He just hasn't gotten it together up to NFL speed.
And geez, is there a team out there that has a history of reclamation projects at safety?
Yeah. No coach has done it better than Sean McDermott. He saved Roman Harper's career.
Yeah.
Roman Harper, for those of you who are old enough to remember the name Roman Harper, got cut from the Saints, went in the division to the Panthers, played in a Sean McDermott defense for 1 year, did so well, the Saints signed him back the following year. They were like, oh, we didn't need you, but all of a sudden we saw you were still good.
Yeah. Jordan Poyer is a thing because of Sean McDermott, right? Like that's the entire reason he had a career after he got cut by Cleveland.
So when I see this, on one hand, I go, fuck the Jets. They deserve whatever happens to them. And I'm happy. If anything, if we're going to steal a signee away from a team, I'm happy it's the Jets.
Yeah, well, and also because the other guy who could do that with a safety would have been Robert Saleh.
Right? But what I don't love is that both him and wide receiver Jalen Virgil, who signed off the Broncos, who were trying to get him to the practice squad,
come back,
and he came to the Bills, they both said the same thing. They believe that they have a better pathway to playing time being here in Buffalo.
Well, and Mike White, too. By all accounts, Mike White, the Dolphins wanted him back on their practice squad.
Yep.
And he decided to come to Buffalo instead. And I don't know if there's a path to starting.
Well, I made a joke last week about the Fred Sanford thing. I go, Brandon Beane and Fred Sanford, like one and the same, because they have created just a junkyard of quarterbacks here in Buffalo.
Oh, my God.
They're useless. How many more useless quarterbacks do you want to stack on top of each other?
What is that? Hat on a hat, harumph? Right?
You'll never let me live that down.
I shan't.
So it's definitely not something I'm used to hearing. And it's a little jarring as a fan when you watch the makeup of the roster, is that they really don't have the depth they used to. That right there is proof positive that this team is nowhere near as deep as it used to be. That these guys feel like coming here is a boon to their career because they have a easier path to getting snaps, actual meaningful game time snaps.
Mm-hmm.
And for as much as I hate it, I look at what we still have going on.
Ryan, how is it? Empty calories?
Empty calories.
It's just, it's like a Coors Light, but worse somehow.
Oh, it's worse than a Coors Light.
It's way worse than a Coors Light.
Yeah, it's worse than a Coors Light. There's literally no taste to this. It's amazing. Like it's like the beer that I was drinking when I had COVID last week. There's no taste to it whatsoever. I can't even tell. Like when it says sold on merit, made on honor, I don't know
whose honor.
Whose? Because, sir, whoever's honor this is,
they should be offended.
Yeah, I mean this is. Woof.
So here's what I'll say, Chris. Now I want to get to the quick hitters before we dive into the 50s, the actual guys who got kept on the roster, and just our takes on the actual makeup of what we're going to see. There were some cuts that were made that I think need to be addressed. Chris, Gable Stevenson. Where are all the Gable Stevenson fans? I want you front and center. Come up here, step to the front row. I want you to stand here in front of me and tell me that you thought he was something.
I texted Drew the alert that he was released, and I said, Drew, it's your moment.
This is my moment. This is it. It's time. I don't want to hear about reclamation projects or, hey, we've got a guy who's never played the sport before. But guess what? It's okay. He's great. He's athletic, and it's all going to be fine. We can teach him how to play the game of pro football. If I'm incensed, but I'm one of these guys who never got a training camp call and then had to sit at home and watch Gable Stevenson, or Stevenson, doesn't matter, he's not here anymore, watch him fuck up an appearance in the NFL. To get to go out there on Saturdays and play preseason football, and to know that that guy stole a spot from guys who have actually been coached from childhood to play the game, I told you, Gable Stevenson, his presence on the roster was offensive to me. And it still is. And it should be to free agent defensive tackles everywhere. Because what it underscores is that the Bills care so little that they're willing to throw away an opportunity for you to prove you belong in the league on some guy that they knew would fail.
Yeah, I don't understand what the thought process around that was. Like, what was the thought? And even for people who thought that there was a chance for him, like based on what, right? Like, let's use a similar example, Brock Lesnar. By all accounts, 3-time national champion wrestler when he was in college, played football his entire life, played the preseason for the Vikings and got cut. So, I mean, what about Gable Stevenson? Well, like they looked at it and they were like, yeah, I mean, he's better than Brock. I mean, surely he'll work out better than Brock Lesnar, who couldn't find a spot on a roster, right? Like, based on what? I don't understand the rationale, because it's not like he was an international signing where he didn't pick up a roster spot or didn't take up, like Kingsley Jonathan, right? Like he's not taking a roster spot away from anybody, right? Because he's an international signing. They get a waiver for him. There's no harm, no foul to him being on the roster, right? It's legitimately a dart throw. But he's not taking anything away from anybody. Nobody's not getting snaps because Kingsley Jonathan's on the roster, right?
Yeah.
But Gable, he was taking
taking
a roster
away
spot
a
away
job from other
someone who
qualified
has
defensive
worked,
tackles.
Someone
that
who
were
has
just
worked
out there on the free agent
for this
market.
moment their entire life. I mean, I have a kid that I know that
Robert Tongan goes, it was one spot, but it's one job that some guy could have come in here. Robert, Ryan, if you were to have worked your whole life to prove that you were qualified for something, and then someone else who's wholly unqualified gets that job ahead of you, wouldn't you feel a certain type of way? I feel that way watching it play out.
I mean, I have someone that I graduated from high school with that was a year behind me who made it to the NFL, practice squad, and then got cut at Cutdown Day. He still gets to say that he was an NFL player, right? Like at the end of the day, he still gets to when his Wikipedia page is written and the close of his life comes, he was an NFL player, the top 1%, right?
Yeah.
And Gable Stevenson the Bills took that away from somebody,
yeah,
for the sake of whatever PR bump they got for Gable Stevenson, because that's all it was. There was no, there was no actual, there was no actual benefit to having him on the roster.
Yes. Patrick Moran tweeted out a day or two ago. Good on the Bills not having defensive tackle Gable Stevenson take up a practice squad spot from a more deserving Branson Dean. Now, I'll tell you what.
I don't know who Branson Dean is.
Branson Dean used to play defensive tackle at Alabama. And
justice,
I can tell you,
justice for Branson
good.
Dean, right?
He's pretty good.
Yeah.
And he showed that he earned it.
Hashtag justice for Branson Dean. Let's get it trending.
Dean.
Let's get it trending.
Justice for Branson. It's no one will know what we're talking about, but it might start a movement.
Yeah.
Half Dead Herman
Also,
with another banger. Gabe Stevenson was a DEI hire.
Oh my God. Sophia God's friend just sent us our first super chat.
Yeah, nobody's.
First of all, we don't ask for that.
Sophia, why are you giving us money?
We
don't deserve it.
Thank
you for giving us.
Can I take credit for the Can I take credit for the super chat? Can I?
Sure.
Yeah.
Like, because I'm here. It's your first one.
Yeah, you must be it.
Do you want to?
It must be your pretty face.
Ooh. Yikes.
So, with that said, Gable Stevenson gone, but also Zach Davidson. Chris,
what happened?
Get the pad ready. Zach Davidson got cut so hard that I can still, if I listen hard enough on the wind, hear Kevin Massari deleting all of his tweets about that guy.
I just had it.
Wow, you suck at this.
I don't care who thinks it. No, it is a personal attack, and I don't care. I don't care. It's really.
Was it somewhere if you listen really closely?
Yeah.
In the distance, you can hear the tears.
You can just hear it.
Can you start
the
it?
clacking of keys as he's trying to furiously delete all of his. Zach Davidson's going to make this roster because he heard 3 media guys say it, and so he regurgitated it like it was his own organic.
How about
thought.
this? We still have an injury to Quentin Morris.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that still wasn't enough for Davidson to get on the 53.
That's literally how bad Davidson is as a tight end, is that an injured guy beat him out for the active roster. Like that alone, like you lost your job.
Well, I mean, the question for Davidson was always
Quentin Morris didn't take it. You lost.
Yeah, the question for Davidson was always like, what did you bring to the roster that wasn't already there, right? Like he had 2 guys in front of him in Schultz and Knox that were better at what they did than he was at what he did. Quentin Morris at least blocks, right? Like he's the best pass blocking and run blocking tight end on the roster. Davidson, by all accounts, can't run block.
No, not at all.
So what was
He's
his
like
path?
a big wide receiver.
Yeah.
So Mike Gesicki 3.0, I don't need you here on my roster.
Right.
Especially not if I already have a Dalton Kincaid and a Dawson Knox and a guy who's a core. Here's the thing I've noticed too. It's almost like if you can't play offense, you better be a core special teamer.
Especially with Sean McDermott.
Do you guys remember Jonathan Williams? The
Absolutely.
Bills drafted him at running back, and he wasn't terrible. But Sean McDermott showed up the year after he was drafted and washed him right out.
Well, he came in fat too. Didn't he come in fat to training camp?
No,
What didn't he? I thought he was the running back that came
play
in out of
special
shape. No?
teams.
Yeah.
And they said, "Listen, we have plenty of room for backup running backs, but this roster stinks on ice. It's 2017. We're paring it down. We're going to completely rebuild this thing. What do you do here? We know they drafted you. What do you do here?" And he goes, "Well, I run the ball."
What is it you say you do?
And they go,
here?
"Well, we have a LaShawn McCoy who runs the ball. What do you do when he's running the ball?" And he goes, "Well, I sit on the bench." And they go, "Oh, really? All right, we have a million guys who can sit on the bench. We have a million guys."
Hell, son, I can sit on the bench.
And so it's almost like if you're a backup on offense, Zach Davidson truthers, hear me now. If you're a backup's backup on offense, you better play special teams or that's your ass.
Mm-hmm.
Under a Sean McDermott run Buffalo Bills franchise.
Well, I'm just curious if Zach Davidson had such a high opportunity to make this roster. Where is he now? Is he on a roster?
He's on the practice squad.
Who is on the Bills practice squad?
They brought him back.
Yeah, still in the league.
And
We're
I'm
gonna play
sure
that game with him in a
somewhere
couple
right
years?
out there, Kevin Massari is editing all of his tweets to be like, "Well, what I said was he could make the roster."
He's one Dawson Knox injury away, sir. And it'll be as soon as Dawson Knox goes down with another wrist injury like he always does. It'll be Zach Davidson gets elevated, and it'll be see, I told you he was going to make the roster.
For those of you who don't know why it seems like I'm making fun of this guy, it's not like I'm trying to be mean. What it is that this is a guy who just like edits everything he says and then tries to point back like, "Oh no, but you see, I'm technically correct." I just don't have time for it. I don't care. It's awful, isn't it? Like, what are we doing here? Like, Chris, how many people are watching this thing right now? What is it, 33?
32 is what I have.
32? The 32 of you who are watching us live are going to be the people who hear me say this first. Just be yourself and be genuine. Don't regurgitate someone else's thoughts packaged as your own, because if you do that, it's going to be like you're trying to wear a jacket that doesn't fit. And there's a lot of guys who do this stuff that fall into that category, and I just can't co-sign that.
You know what they do? You know what you do? Say it with your chest. Stop worrying about being right.
This is it. Just if you think it, say it. And if you guys hate me for it, okay, fine. You know what? That's okay.
I mean, how do you guys think Drew?
I'm a horse's ass.
How do you think Drew has had a mildly successful podcast for as long as he has?
Absolutely. Because if you can be one thing, be genuine. Be you, say what you think, and stand on it. I don't know. The last thing I'll talk about here is before we move on. Joe Andreessen. Surprise.
Hey, good for him.
Chris, if you want to go ahead and put the Our Lads, Buffalo Bills Our
Speaking
Lads
of which,
up on
can we
this
get
TV.
let's get a cheers to Joe Andreessen.
Local
Because,
product?
I mean, hey,
Chris, what did you say earlier?
you got to root for the local kids.
Party at Longneckers?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Guys,
every
Party at
yeah,
Longneckers
no.
in Lancaster.
Here's what it is. I'll look at the camera. Every Tuesday night during the season, as long as Joe Andreessen is on the roster, every Tuesday night at Longneckers in Lancaster, you get to go meet Joe Andreessen. I have no idea if he's going to be there or knows even what Longneckers is or has even stepped foot, but Tuesday's an off day in the NFL. Go to Longneckers, have a drink on Joe Andreessen. There you go.
The question is, does Longneckers have 75-cent wings?
No,
Like
that's
the-
why Adolph's wins.
Like the
No.
mildly fascist
No.
bar that we talked about in the
Mildly
last
fascist.
I will
fascist adjacent.
I will tell you, although Longneckers does not have that, they do have Hep C.
Okay, hey. And what's the deal? Is it like dollar wing? Is it like dollar draft night? Is it like
Yeah.
$1.50 Hep C?
You can get the same Hep C at Longneckers.
Buy a drink at Hep
As
C
you
free?
do at
Like get
games.
it, toss in? Yeah.
So, Joe Andreessen being included on the roster. Chris, I need the Our Lads. Right?
Sorry, I'm.
While you're pulling
I know
up the
you're
Our
busy.
Lads,
I know you're busy.
While you're
being
pulling up the
popular.
R lads, Ryan, Drew is from Buffalo. Yes. The question was, are you
Southtowns.
guys both from
Southtowns.
Buffalo? I am not. I'm a East Side. I'm a Rochester kid.
Okay.
Drew is a Buffalo guy.
I
Chris
love how
is-
you pulled up the Jets.
Well, it was already in my saved history.
Producer of the year, folks. Hey guys, pull me something up. He goes, I brought the Jets up. It's the same as the Bills, right?
Yeah, same division. At least he got the division right.
Here's what I like when you look at the makeup of our linebacker core. When you bring in Andreessen. Eddie Ulofoshio, who we're lucky enough that we got put on to him. Chris, you remember that?
Yeah, EJ.
During the draft process, EJ Snyder of Bootleg Football Podcast came on and did our linebacker preview. And he talked about if you're looking for a pure coverage linebacker, it's Eddie Ulofoshio. He gives you a little bit in the run, but he
was the other linebacker at UCL at Washington, right?
Yes, at Washington.
Yes.
Not the star, but the other guy.
Yeah.
And he was like, we met him, we talked to him. He's super smart. He diagnoses so quickly. His recognition skills are off the charts, and he makes for a great pass protecting linebacker in the NFL. Borderline, like almost third safety type player.
Sure. Yeah.
So
the
Bills,
tweener that McDermott likes to play.
So the Bills drafted him, which we were excited about. And now he's on the final 53. When I look at that and I look at Andreessen in the back, look at what's in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
You have Dorian Williams and Terrell Bernard, who are going to man the middle of what we know is a very nickel-heavy defensive formation. Big nickel. But what I see is them gearing up for the fact that Balin Spector is never going to be a starter for this team. Instead, what you're doing is you're lining up an Andreessen and an Ulofoshio and maybe a Nick Morrow just for veteran support to be the guy for as long as there's no Matt Milano. Because what you've done is you've got athleticism. Because like Ulofoshio and Andreessen are what Matt Milano is in one package. It's almost like, for those of you out there who are nerds, the Dragon Ball Z thing where they combine, to form one dude. If Ulofoshio and Andreessen were to combine themselves like Dragon Ball Z, it would become Matt Milano. The team's looking at it going, depending on what the matchup is, and depending on where we are, and depending on where we are by week 7 or 8, and where Milano is in his recovery, we're going to need different things for different games. And we like to know that we can mix and match physicality against the run and also pass coverage ability, but both at a very high level. I think Andreessen showed himself in that preseason game against the Steelers.
Yeah. That was the game, I think, that got him on this roster. It was really impressive.
Because he played against their starters and essentially said, hey, listen, I can do the thing that's so hard to do as a smaller linebacker. Disengage from contact, and not only can I disengage from contact, that through contact, I never lose where the ball is.
Yeah.
People don't understand what an asset that is as a linebacker, to have the wherewithal to always know where the play is going. Matt Milano is special because of his instincts. He always seems to pick the right gap. He always seems to know where the ball is going or where the ball carrier's headed or where the pass is headed. And that's what makes him special. Andreessen showed it in that game, that at least in the run game, he understands how ball carriers work. And so when he's fighting off a tackle who outweighs him by 40 pounds, 50 pounds, maybe 60, he knows how to shed a block and then get to the spot where the running back is trying to go faster than him.
Yeah, or at least force it back inside, force it to the sideline, depending on what his responsibility is. But the key is he's not getting washed out of plays when he starts in pursuit. And that's the big thing, especially for undersized linebackers. And if he can do it in a preseason game against a team like the Steelers, there's no reason to think that he can't step in a pinch and fill in, and he's experienced. I mean, he's an older rookie, right? I mean, because he played how many seasons before he transferred to UB
Buford
and
Bulldogs?
Yeah, I mean,
Buford Bulldogs.
Yeah, so I mean, he's experienced. He's got a lot of time under his belt. And then you talk about Nick Morrow, who, again, you don't luck into multiple 100 tackle seasons in the NFL, typically, at least in today's day and age. Balin Spector, we still don't really know what he is, but I mean,
I don't think he's a linebacker. I think he's there like Tyler Matakevich was.
Yeah.
He's the new Matakevich.
Agreed. I agree with that. And then you've got Olaf Fashino, who Ulofoshio. Sorry. So I mean, and you've got him who's kind of like the future.
We corrected him like an asshole.
The future, if Dorian Williams doesn't work out, like that's the next guy that's going to step in, and and he's young, and he's going to be the next Matt Milano type of.
And so that's
when you mispronounce Ulofoshio, we get mad as the left wing media when you mispronounce Kamala. So
Kamala.
Same thing.
I love how this asshole can't help but inject politics somewhere into a football podcast. What I will say is, though, like I said, we now have built, I think that was integral to Ulofoshio and Andreessen being on the roster, was that they both showed something that Matt Milano does. They don't do it together. But now, at least on the back end of the roster, the Bills can kind of mix and match, and they trust Dorian Williams not to be an out-and-out liability. So they say, hey, you're the guy for now, right up until you're not.
Right.
And if one of these guys happens to show you up at any point, I think it's a fluid situation in the linebacker core.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, I think Andreessen is there in case something doesn't work out for somebody else. He's kind of that all-around linebacker. And they're hoping that Ulofoshio turns into what Matt Milano was
100%,
at one point, right?
because they saw his pass coverage chops in college.
Yeah, I mean, because that's what Matt Milano started as, right? He was the coverage linebacker.
Well,
the guy
he was the safety.
Yeah, but he was the guy because Tremaine Edmonds couldn't cover anything, right? Like he couldn't cover a piece of bread.
Early in his career, they put him out there as a coverage.
And then they were like, "Oh, he can blitz
good.
too. Oh, he can run. He can run. Oh, okay." And all of a sudden, he's an All-Pro.
And then the day came where they were like, "Oh, we have to pick one of you," and they well, we hate to say this, Tremaine, but bye.
Yeah.
Happy trails.
Now, whether that worked out or not, whether they made the right decision or not, I think that's
look at
a
Terrell
debate
Bernard.
for later. Yeah.
Look at Terrell Bernard. He's doing well.
Sure.
Now, if I want to switch sides of the ball, Chris, scroll up here for our friend, Ryan. I want to talk about this young-ass offensive line stable and just the offensive line makeup as a whole. Let's look at this because I wrote myself a note here. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I had to go into my notes. Here's what I think is funny. Brown in a contract year. The team clearly has faith in him, and they don't want to try to undermine that. But at the same time, they didn't bring in anyone to backstop him that has any real NFL experience. So they are truly trusting Spencer Brown to go out there on a wire and go, hey, man, wire to wire, 18-plus weeks, stay healthy.
Stay healthy and be good.
Stay healthy and be good.
Right. And I think it's a gamble because it's a gamble you typically haven't seen from Brandon Beane. And in a lot of cases, Brandon Beane would have wanted to extend a Spencer Brown early, right? Yeah. Like this offseason would have been the time to extend Spencer Brown because if he comes out and shores up the right side of that right tackle position.
Now you owe him.
Right tackles are getting paid a lot of money in today's NFL, right?
Well, why do you think we cut all of the cap space that we did?
Right. I mean,
I think they're preparing for a world where we pay Spencer Brown a sizable contract.
Yeah.
Dawkins, Brown, you have bookend tackles to protect your quarterback.
Right.
If he can get the job done, you're prepared to open the wallet. The problem is that injuries do occur. Freak injuries.
Right.
Just ask Eric Wood. How many times has he been rolled up on? Or just lost playing time because of a fluke injury? There's very limited depth beyond him that has real NFL starting experience. And so that's interesting to me because what I see is a real trust in Aaron Kromer. When I look at the makeup of this roster, Chris, you look at who the backups are. Like Van Pran Granger was a recent draft pick, so you assume he's going to make the team. Then you've got guys like Alec Anderson, who was taken last year as an undrafted free agent. Tylen Grable was this year's 6th-round pick. He's the backup right tackle right now. Ryan Vandermark was another UDFA from last season. These were guys that they vetted. They liked their athleticism. They brought them to training camp. Now, you could say, hey, I'm doing this for 1 year. I'm trying to be cheap, and I'm up against the cap, so I can't afford a lot of depth. I'm going to intentionally keep a bunch of cheap backup players. It's another thing when you've hemorrhaged all the cap, all the dead money, and you're still keeping those guys around. They believe in them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's telling too that there's 10 rookies on this roster.
Yes.
18% of your roster is rookie players. And I think that's a big ask, especially when
And 3 of them are like 2 of them are on the offensive line.
well and two
and a
of them
bunch
are probably
second-year players.
and 2 of them are at your 2 biggest question marks on the offensive line, right? Like the 2 biggest question marks are, can Ryan McGovern transition or Connor McGovern transition back to center?
Mhm.
That's question 1, rookie behind him. And can Spencer Brown put together back-to-back good seasons, rookie behind him? That's question 2. The rest of the offensive line, do you have a question about this offensive line other than those 2 positions?
No.
So is it telling that they chose to back up the 2 biggest question marks with rookies?
The one thing I will say is David Edwards. David Edwards worries me because he didn't look that impressive in the offseason. And I just don't know. Guard is weird.
Mm-hmm.
I played guard. I'm not smart. I'm not the most athletic person in the entire world. What I do know, guys, is that I look at this and I say, if there's a weak spot in this line, it might be Edwards because he's the reason Connor McGovern is playing center.
Mm-hmm.
If there was someone else here, like, again, we've talked about all preseason, there may exist a world where you slide McGovern over to left guard, you bring up a Will Clapp from the practice squad to back him up, as all of a sudden the Lone Granger is your starting center, and you all of a sudden might have a really functional offensive line because your guard and tackle spot each has somebody off their pivot who they know can do their job and work in tandem.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, can that guy run the pivot?
Right.
I think we're really thin there.
Yeah, the goal is, right? The goal is that McGovern is your center of the future, right? He's your center for your next few seasons. He's only 26 years old. But if he's not, we just drafted our center of the future, right? And that's in VPG. Just to step in and play that role. And we've got Will Clapp on the practice squad if he needs to step into a backup situation. Worst case scenario, we know McGovern can be successful at left guard. We'll bump him back there. We'll start VPG. Hopefully that's in break glass in case of emergency situation. But that's kind of I see the vision there.
I'm just looking through the comments. Sophia, she makes a great point. Tylen Grable really looked good. He did look good as a tackle. And so I'm not crapping on the idea of him being an NFL player. I'm just saying it's a gamble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But what they're doing is they're trusting Aaron Cromer. And so all of this is to say that there is so much riding on Aaron Cromer this year. Because
as long as you're not asking him to watch your kids.
Whoa,
we're
no.
fine,
Ask him to watch your kids. Just don't touch his beach chairs.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Chris, I'm not going to lie to you. How many times has it crossed your mind when you see a group of teenagers doing something unsavory and you go, man, I'd punch those kids out if I was young.
I mean, they don't even need to be teenagers.
It happens. A couple of 9-year-olds just messing with my beach chairs.
It happens so often where I'm like, if I was a little bit younger, I'd wreck those kids over there because I see what they're doing. But right now it's a felony. Like, I can't go over there and rough up those kids. But if I could, I'd come in there like a hot wind. You can't do that. And I'm sure that Aaron Cromer found himself on the wrong side of that situation. With that in mind, I really do believe that the offensive line is going to be okay. But this is a statement to how much they trust Cromer to build this all out with all of that youth. Now, let's switch sides of the defensive line. Let's switch sides of the line. Go down to the defensive line. 10 defensive linemen. That was a shock. 10 defensive linemen was shocking to me. 6 defensive ends?
Mm-hmm.
That tells me that you liked the play of Javon. Everyone's trying to figure out where this comes from. I've seen people go, oh, well, it's because they don't trust Von Miller. Oh, they're doing this because they don't believe Von Miller's ready. No. The reason you're keeping 10 defensive linemen and 6 DNs is because you believed in Javon Solomon so much that you were scared someone else was going to take him.
Yeah, I mean, which is fair, right? I mean, he led the NCAA in sacks last season, right? Like, that's not...
It's not unheard
Someone's
of.
going to look at that and go, I can turn him into a pro player.
And the same reason the Bills drafted him, right? Hey, he led in sacks. And then, oh, wait a minute. He showed up here in the NFL preseason. We expected him to kind of give some pass rush help. We thought he would, because of his size, he would suck against the run. Oh, wait, it turns out he's actually really solid and really instinctive when it comes to run defense. Well, now you've got a guy who has pass rush upside for years to come and also really good against the run. And you're going to what? Give him away?
Right.
Nah, you're going to find a way to keep that guy. But you're not going to bank on him being useful every Sunday.
Right. You know who the interesting one of this group is to me is Tuhill.
Yeah, why is that guy here?
You know
Can
why?
anyone tell me why Tuhill is here?
So when you read, if you were to go in and read his draft profile, you know what he was really, really good at?
Wrestling?
No. You know what he was really good at? He was really, really good at getting into a tight end and getting to the flat in coverage. So he comes in as the Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews alternative in coverage if your coverage guys aren't working out at the linebacker position. That's how I view him, at least after reading. I didn't know anything about him until they kept him. And then I went in and I was like, well, who is this kid, right? He played for Philadelphia, played Stanford.
Yeah,
he went to
Tuhill.
Stanford, right? So I read his draft profile and I was like, oh, he did really well over a tight end and got into the flats. Like, that's what they praised him for when he was coming out in the draft. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, all of our defensive ends really don't do a good job of getting out to the flats and supporting the pass. I can absolutely see a situation where they put him over a Mark Andrews. They put him over a Travis Kelce. They put him over a George Kittle if you get that far, because you do have San Francisco this year. And it's like, oh, I can put him over them. He'll jam them. He'll get to the flats. He'll give my Taron Johnsons one less thing to worry about because I can jam him at the line with Tuhill, bring pressure with Rousseau, and I'm all set. You know, I can blitz off his back end, right? Like, I can blitz Dorian Williams off his back end, let him play the flat as a replacement, and there's my stopper, or at least my solution for quick pass games to the tight ends. Like, that's how I view it. That's why they kept him, I think, as the 10th.
That's incredibly interesting.
Yeah.
And I guess that does make sense when you think about what our schedule is. We play the Ravens. We play the Chiefs.
You play the 49ers.
And if we make the playoffs, we're guaranteed to see at least one of those two AFC teams again.
Yep.
So in that way, I guess that underscores why Casey Tuhill's still here.
And
that was one of my big questions.
And again, I don't know anything from anything. I mean, this could have been something. I'm sure a guy like Joe Marino talked about this on his show.
Oh, sure.
Full disclosure, I don't watch Joe Marino's stuff. I just don't have the time to digest that much, when it comes to Bills stuff. So Joe Marino's, one of the best covering the Bills, but so he may have talked about this already, but just when I read the draft profile of a Casey Tuhill, that's what I read. And I'm like, I can see McDermott's thought process as a defensive guru, that's probably what he wants to do. He wants to make Taron Johnson's life easier. And without a guaranteed Matt Milano, I need to figure out a way to slow these tight ends down.
And also without a guaranteed pass rush, because when you think about who's up front, Daquan Jones was doing really good before he got hurt.
Yeah.
And then Ed Oliver had a really good season last year. So maybe they're both ascending. Greg Rousseau has had a great preseason. I mean, that game against the Steelers, it's the most embarrassing reps I've seen.
I mean, Greg Rousseau looks like a completely different player this year.
He is a
dude this year.
Yeah, he looks like a grown man now.
Yeah.
And then I take a look at Von Miller and I go, well, they didn't let you play. And all the Bills players keep going, oh no, Von's on some different stuff now this year. He's back. You're all going to see. And I go, yeah, but you say that a lot. You guys as players amp each other up a lot. Me, as a kind of pessimistic fan, see this defensive end rotation and I go, Dwayne Smoot might be the next best pass rusher. And I don't know how great that is.
Put some respect on AJ Epinez's name.
He put some respect on
AJ.
But what I like about Dwayne Smoot being here is he's at least done 6 sacks.
Yeah.
Before, multiple times. And he's also a guy who, if you wanted to put together in a game against Kansas City on 3rd and long, you want a NASCAR package, you now have one. Because you can take Epinesa, you can put him on one end. You can take Von Miller, you can take Smoot, and you can
inside.
You can move everybody inside. Put Miller on the right tackle, and now what you have is this pass rush formation that is really difficult for most offensive lines to handle. Because you've got size and length that you're not used to dealing with right in your face as a guard. And just power that Rousseau showed in the preseason. Then you've also got speed on the outside with Von Miller. You've also got Epinesa and Smoot. I think that what they're doing is they're trying to build a poor man's New York Giants pass rush from when they took down
Well, I mean, I think, and you've seen over the past few seasons, you've seen that that's the kryptonite to a Patrick Mahomes, right?
Yes.
Is you stay disciplined, you pressure, you get around his feet, you keep him from running, and if he does run, you've got a guy in Terrell Bernard who can do a spy. You've got a Dorian Williams who can spy at the linebacker position, and you can kind of keep an eye on him and keep him from running too much. Add in the ability to potentially jam Kelsey at the line, which is always my biggest criticism for when teams play Kelsey, is like, why do you let him release free, into the flat or into those open areas? And, we talked about special teams acumen. Maybe that's back to why they've kept the Casey Toohill. Maybe he's like the tight end specialist where he comes in and makes life difficult on 3rd down and keeps the timing down, right? Keeps it from being those timing routes that they throw to Travis Kelce. So, I mean, I think one of the things I talk about a lot with Sean McDermott, all the criticisms I have for him, the one thing you're going to have with Sean McDermott is a top 7 defense.
Sure.
Right? And this is roster construction that gives him the flexibility to run the defense he wants to run. I will never question Sean McDermott on the roster choices he makes at the defensive position. I'm never going to do it. As much as I have issues with him, the one thing I respect him on is his ability to run a defense. So when it comes to roster construction,
he knows what that guy's job is.
He knows what he's doing, right?
He
keeps Mike Edwards. He keeps Cole Bishop. They must be healthy because Sean McDermott's not keeping guys around that can't benefit, right?
No.
Like, how long before DeMar Hamlin gives way to Cole Bishop? I think that's a fun thing to watch as we continue forward. I think Jamarcus Ingram being kept is interesting because, as Rasul Douglas ages, someone's going to have to step into that position.
There's a reason they didn't give him a contract extension.
Absolutely.
Even though he wanted one. And then they actually asked him to take a pay cut.
Yeah.
And he took it to stick here. Do you think that bodes well for his future here?
No, I mean, I can't imagine it does, right? Like, because from a player perspective, and wide receivers and corners are the two guys, right? They're the dudes that think very highly of themselves, right?
And my thing is, when you think about from a fan, if you go, oh, well, they're going to take some unnamed guy and just make him good at corner. Have you watched the Buffalo Bills over the last 5 seasons?
Yeah.
Levi Wallace was an undrafted free agent out of Alabama. Dane Jackson. Where did Dane Jackson go? Oh, wait, late round pick.
Dane motherfucking Jackson.
And then you look at Jamarcus Ingram. Who's to say he's not just another in a long line of projects for this team where they go, hey, enough time on task. We trust that his athleticism and natural aggressiveness will make him a quality backup corner.
And by the way, like, Kaiir Elam is still on the roster.
And
Kaiir Elam, they had every opportunity to trade him last year. It was rumblings that they were going to move him. They kept him. He didn't get cut like a Lewis Cine got cut, right? Like, teams have given up a lot sooner than necessary for a Kaiir Elam to find his way on this roster, and he's still here. Sean McDermott, of every secondary guy in the NFL, right? Like, he's not keeping guys around in the secondary that he doesn't think can turn into something. And the fact that Kaiir Elam is still here, still a first-round pedigree. He has a coach now at the corner position.
Had the best preseason of his entire career.
He has a secondary coach that knows him, right? Like, there's familiarity there. Maybe this is a turning point season for him. Maybe this is like he finally figured it out type of season. And again, I'm not going to question Sean McDermott at the defensive position, and especially not in the secondary. So I think it's really telling. And to your point, I go back to what Dak Prescott had to say about his contract, right? And I think Rasul Douglas probably feels the same way. I'm not concerned that I don't have a new contract, but it's going to be telling whether or not I have a new one by the time the season rolls around.
Yes.
Right? Like Dak Prescott said that yesterday about Jerry Jones, right? Like, I'm not concerned about my contract situation, but it's telling whether I have a contract or don't by the time the season starts. And I think
so
Rasul Douglas probably feels the same way.
Spot,
right.
Because he's like, oh, I'll know. Like, but he should know already if they asked him to take a pay cut.
Right. And Ryan brings up a good point on YouTube, right? Like, good of the guy to take a pay cut. Right. But what was his alternative, right?
They would have cut him and made Ingram.
And he's looking at things going.
Elam might be the starter right now if he doesn't make that call.
And Douglas is probably looking at things going, well, Green Bay traded me away. Buffalo cut me when arguably they don't have a better option. What's that going to look like on the open market for me?
Yes.
Am I going to have a job if Buffalo cuts me?
100%.
Yeah.
So then we flip over to the offensive side of the ball. Let's talk about, before we end this, because I know we're running long, let's look at the wide receiver position.
I'll take it from here, Andrew. I did say MVS will get the Claypool sediment.
There he goes.
We have a Jamaican Me Happy.
He's got his Seagram's ready.
This is for me predicting that MVS would get the injury settlement in the way of a Chase Claypool. So talk amongst yourselves.
Well, here, scroll up on that screen.
Well, I made the comment on the last show that this wide receiver core may be a bottom 5 receiving core in the NFL, and Drew disagreed with that. So I'm really interested to see where this goes.
I'm not going to lie to you. Looking at it now, I regret a lot of what I said. I think that this wide receiver core is not highly touted in terms of proven ability. I will caution this. When you want to say it's hard to evaluate what a wide receiver's value is when you're playing for certain teams or certain quarterbacks or certain offensive coordinators, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can all agree that matters. Look at Stephon Diggs. If the Vikings had known that Stephon Diggs would be like an all-pro like he was for Buffalo after the trade, do you think they would have just kept him?
No, I mean, Stephon Diggs was an alpha in Minnesota. Like,
sure.
Let's not get it twisted, right? Like, they didn't have Justin Jefferson when they traded away Stephon
They would have
Diggs.
found a way to make it work.
Maybe
if they had known. Okay,
maybe, but we've seen wide receivers year in and year out that just as much as. Do you think that the Packers didn't want to make it work with Devontae Adams? Like, receivers have this unique quality that if they don't want to make it work, it's not going to work. Like, they don't care what TO. Like,
he's got the key to the city.
Like, there's player after player. I mean, Calvin Johnson retired because they couldn't make it work in Detroit, right? And they were just like, we're not going to trade you. We're going to make it work. And he's like, the hell with you. I'm just going to retire, man. I'm not doing this anymore. So I do think it's telling that the Buffalo Bills were willing to let Stephon Diggs go, knowing what is behind him at the wide receiver position. I think that's pretty telling.
Well, Half Dead Herman made a comment that just resonated. He was like, "Hey, I can't get over the fact that 4 out of 6 of the losses last season were games that we had the lead, and Josh was on the bench when McDermott's defense collapsed inside of 2 minutes. Yet he calls the defense tough and gritty."
Well, we talked about Mike McDaniel, right? Like, that was on last show, I think. That wasn't even on this show, so maybe the live audience would get
guys.
I
have a thing. Mike McDaniel from the Miami Dolphins is just bizarro Sean McDermott. They're both the same person. They say a lot of strong, emphatic things. They believe it, and they both have a very strong acumen to their specific side of the ball from when they were coordinators. The problem is that as head coaches, they allow a lot of dumb shit to happen around their team. And that they've both been given contract extensions before they won their first playoff game. They also are the reason, like their side of the ball is the reason that their team fails when things get tight. It's weird. And then you look at them physically and you go, Sean McDermott's this tough old guy who was a wrestler. And then you look at Mike McDaniel, and he looks like a Best Buy employee.
He's the nerd that gets stuffed in the locker at school.
Not now. I saw the memes.
He's Barry Horowitz.
Now he's the drug kingpin.
Now he's the drug. Now he's Barry.
He's Barry Horowitz.
Now he's the drug kingpin of South Miami. He's the guy who wears sunglasses inside. But with that said, they are one and the same, just mirror images of each other on different sides of the football.
Yeah.
And I hate that.
Yeah.
I hate that for our football team. And I think that you're seeing that when it comes to the way this wide receiver core is constructed. Sean McDermott is okay with the decision to pare down this group to nothing. They have a rookie, Keon Coleman, right? And then they've got Mac Hollins, Curtis Samuel, MVS, and Shakir. And you go, well, Shakir, he could be good. He's got upside. He showed well last year when he was featured. Curtis Samuel, we don't know what he is, and he's already hurt with one of his famous nagging injuries.
We know what he is.
One of his
We've seen enough of him.
famous nagging injuries. Mac Hollins,
we know what he is.
Hasn't played with a good quarterback or good offensive coordinator. And
he's better at giving home improvement instructions on Instagram.
Meanwhile, Keon Coleman, like an MVS. Keon Coleman's a rookie with a super high ceiling and a really low floor. And then MVS is the guy who couldn't have gotten luckier out of anybody to ever play wide receiver. Who are going to be your career quarterbacks? I don't know. Hall of Famer Aaron Rodgers. Hall of Famer Patrick Mahomes. Oh, I'll just leave that and go to future Hall of Famer Josh Allen. What the fuck are like? You can't make an impact day to day for any of those teams, then you're not very good.
Yeah, I mean, I have questions about this wide receiver core.
And the fact that they only kept 5 is telling, because what it tells you, we all have questions. What I want to say is they kept extra on defense for a reason. They know they're going to be on the field.
Yeah.
They understand that this offense is going to run through the tight ends. It's going to run through the running backs. And those wide receivers are just a luxury now. We're dialing the clock back on the Bills offense. Way. It's like if I had a meter and I could go, hey, Narragansett, take me back in time. Take me back in time to where the Bills offense didn't need wide receivers to be successful. And they would go, okay, well, here's 2018. Well, they go, hey, here we are, 2024. 2023, 2020, 2021. Whoa. You're pushing through the years. You're going back to 2017. And you're like, oh, yeah, I remember a year when running backs got me to the playoffs. And I was happy with that. I went all the way back in time to a world where Narragansett tasted good and people called it a decent beer. And I remember a world where we as Bills fans were happy with a team that could rush for 1,000 yards with a single running back, score touchdowns with some other ones, maybe get our quarterback involved because he had legs. And hey, by the way, our defense might be able to hold some teams to 18 points and we can kick field goals and get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's presumptuous to think that all three of us in this room were okay with that type of offense, because I wasn't, right? Like, I wasn't. No,
none of us loved that.
I wasn't
none
content with just making the playoffs, right? Like,
but we loved it.
But here's the question that I have.
And will you love it now?
Do you know? You're assuming they succeed in their goal, right? Like, sure. I have two questions here. One, why at this point does Sean McDermott get a say in what wide receivers are on the field, or how many get kept? I think he does,
right? But what I will
said he's
say
okay
is,
with, right?
But it is interesting that they carried so many defensive players and then have no offensive depth.
Right. So the other thing I have is Chris made. I don't know if Chris knows. I don't know if you know, Drew. Do you know how many targets have been vacated from last year's roster?
It's a sizable number.
It's more than a sizable number. 241 targets. Stephon Diggs was 180 or 160. Sorry. Gabe Davis 81 targets. Right. Okay. So 241 targets have been vacated from this offense. What have they brought in to replace that? Who's going to catch 241 additional targets? Mac Hollins? Is Mac Hollins an 80 target guy? Do you want to give him 80 targets? Because he's slotted for 80 targets right now. That's Gabe Davis, right?
I think what you're going to find out is that this offense.
I want an answer, Drew, because you dodged all my questions last episode. I want an answer. Who's going to replace 241 targets?
I
did not
think
realize our
the ball.
podcast was hosted by Kamala Harris.
Kamala, sir.
Kamala. I think that this is a team that is embracing the idea that we're not going to throw the ball.
You can't. Today's NFL. You cannot throw the football. Who?
100%.
Who?
So Dawson Knox.
Who's successful that doesn't throw the football?
Hang on. So what you're going to see is you're going to see a giant uptick in targets for Dalton Kincaid.
What does that mean, though? What is a giant uptick in targets?
Shakir. You're going to see Khalil Shakir absorb some of those.
Okay.
But I think, whether you like it or not, you're going to see a more run-centered offense. And that's okay.
Is it? Who? Name me a team that's been successful that runs the ball to the tune of 241 targets less than what the Bills had last year.
This is where I've been hoping this show degenerated to.
The answer is
so I can end with a single point.
Iowa.
Guys, Sean McDermott is Iowa. Sean McDermott's a wrestler who just drafts guys who he thinks are tough, and he thinks he can wrestle everybody to the ground and beat you with finesse. This year, especially this roster construction, is going to be a testament to Sean McDermott. Because there's no way you kept 10 defensive linemen and then shorted your wide receiver group, and that didn't have a little bit of input from the coach. Right?
Miami kept 4 wide receivers.
Well, that's wild.
But 2 of them are Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's a luxury.
Yeah.
To do that.
We don't have that luxury.
Like, if Philadelphia were to keep 4 wide receivers, that's okay, right? Because their top 3 wide receivers are Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown, and the newly acquired Jahan Dotson, right? Like, that's okay if you have 4 wide receivers and 3 of them are those guys. It's okay if you have 4 wide receivers and 2 of them are Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. What's not okay is when you've got 5 wide receivers, one of them is a guy that's nothing but question marks. That's Khalil Shakir. You don't know what he is, right? One of them is a journeyman without the team changes, which is Curtis Samuel, right? One of them is a second-round rookie because nobody liked him enough to take him in the first round. Not even Buffalo liked him enough to take him in the first round.
No.
Right? And the other guy is a career special teamer who, for whatever reason, walks around in bare feet with his hair out and just prefers to live the caveman life. Like, as a Bills fan, as someone who's covered and watched this team for a long time, Dalton Kincaid had 91 targets last year. What's a realistic target number that you think he gets to?
It's going to be hard to see him getting more.
No, he'll get more.
But
But what does he get to? What does he get? 120?
120 is still not absorbing
but 120,
all the
you still have
210,
211 targets to replace. Like, who's the wide receiver that this team is going to throw the football to when you need a first down?
Ryan Davis.
For the last 4 seasons, for the last 4 seasons, and Chris, I'm going to ask you, for the last 4 seasons, when you've needed a first down, Josh Allen has known that he can go to Stephon Diggs. He can go to that dude, right? Who's the dude in this offense beyond Josh Allen? Because Josh Allen's a dude. Josh Allen's a centaur. Josh Allen's, whatever you want to call him. Josh Allen is every bit as good as he needs to be in the NFL to win a Super Bowl. He's a top 2, 3 quarterback in the NFL, and I'll fight anyone who disagrees. If I was starting a franchise today, Josh Allen would be my number 1 pick, and that's over Patrick Mahomes. That's how much I believe in Josh Allen. Who's going to catch the football for him? Because Dawson Knox isn't going to catch 100 balls.
Oh, you mean the Transformer? The guy who literally, his hands go wop, 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 and they become frying pans.
Let's turn Dalton Kincaid into Travis Kelce. That's the goal, right? That's what everyone thinks they're going to do. Dalton Kincaid's going to be the new Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
What's that mean? 140 targets?
Yeah.
You still got to replace 160 targets. Who catches the football? I think Khalil Shakir is going to be a good wide receiver. out of the 3 wide receivers that are going to get a lot of targets this year, I'm drafting Khalil Shakir in fantasy, and I'm stashing him at the end of the bench because I think Khalil Shakir's got the build, the talent, the ability to be a top. When we talk fantasy football, he's a top 24 talent at wide receiver, right? He's a wide receiver 2 all day long, and that's fantasy football, right? That means he's going to be a top 24 wide receiver because he's got Josh Allen throwing the football to him. Josh Allen needs someone to throw the football to. James Cook can't catch. Ray Davis, I think, is going to absorb some of those targets, but you've got a lot of targets to replace. And you've got a lot of targets to replace on an offense that didn't win anything. Like, it's not like Kansas City coming off a Super Bowl win is like, well, you got to replace 210 targets, right? Like, we won a Super Bowl, and we got to replace 210 targets. Maybe we parse it down a little bit. We're still good enough to win the Super Bowl. This team hasn't been good enough to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And they got to replace 211 targets. That's a problem, man. That's a problem. And I hope I'm wrong. I love when I'm wrong about the Bills because I'm typically more pessimistic about them, but I just don't know. Josh Allen combined with Sean McDermott defense is good enough to win you 11 games. I picked them to win the division. I think they're good enough to win the division. But I'm back to the conversation that I was having when I had my own show 5 years ago where I said, so what? You get to the playoffs, so what? Are you going to beat Baltimore in the playoffs? On the road, are you going to go into Kansas City again and win a playoff game? Do you trust this football team right now to go into Cincinnati and win a football game? I'm not sure I do, right?
Yeah.
Because Sean McDermott can't coach in big games. Sean McDermott's defense doesn't hold up in big moments. Josh Allen can only do so much, and he leaves the field with 13 seconds left in a lead, and they don't win the football game, right? Like, there's a lot of questions. And then if you do get to the Super Bowl, are you good enough to beat San Francisco? Are you good enough to beat Detroit? Are you good enough to beat Philadelphia in those big type of games? You've got 211 targets, and you don't have Stephon Diggs on the roster. You don't have a dude who's going to go get it. If Keon Coleman's the dude, I'm all for it, man. But I don't see it right now. I think this is a bottom 5 wide receiver core, and when you've got a stud in Josh Allen, I have a problem with you wasting a prime and not taking a shot on someone like Michael Thomas. Like, could you bring in somebody?
And
right?
what I'll say is that there's still time. People said the same thing, like, oh, nothing good can happen.
Hey, Ralph Wilson in the comments believes that Shakir earned Josh's trust and will have a breakout year.
I'm hedging, and every single fantasy league, I agree with Ralph. And every single fantasy league that I'm in, legitimately, every single fantasy league. And Drew, if you want a guy that you can throw in there that someone's gonna bid up on Monday's draft with Geary and all them, Shakir, man, because I think Geary and I are gonna get into a bidding war for him. I'm all in on Khalil Shakir fantasy wise this year.
I'm looking at the YouTube comments, and here's what I'm going to say. First of all, Ryan Tongan, I love the fact that you show up here. He goes, give us another hour. He goes, just have more beers. It'll be fine.
No, Chris will be tapping his watch too much his finger by the end of the hour.
I like that Half Dead Herman, the Rock Pile Report, making Buffalo Bills podcast great again.
Yeah.
Yes, look what you did, Chris.
Sorry, I got to be a man of reason.
Herman, we like you. So what I want to know is, realistically, are you mad at the makeup of this roster?
I am, but only because of the wide receiver situation.
Everything else, if you take that out of the equation and you go, hey, at the deadline, they have assets, they have things they can do if they think we're on a trajectory where, like, hey, we survived the early onslaught of our schedule and we're on pace to a schedule that looks like we might be able to earn a seed, like a high seed. We can make a trade and just get a guy in here.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the interesting thing to keep an eye on as you move forward in the season is Matt Milano on track? Because if Matt Milano's on track, that changes the concept of your defense, right? Like, that solidifies what that defense looks like. Is Kyer Elam playing well? Do you have does Cole Bishop get healthy? Does Mike Edwards get healthy? Does that secondary look like it's going to be a stalwart? Is Von Miller back, right? Like, there's a lot of things you're going to be able to tell over the first 4 weeks of the season that I think could lead to, okay, now who do we target in a wide receiver situation, right? Like,
there will be teams that have someone to give up.
There will be teams. There will be teams who are, does Cincinnati struggle early.
And
And now
decide-
all of a sudden
well,
they're
hang
going to
on.
move T. Higgins
And they
because
go,
we
"Hey,
can't sign him to a long-term deal.
That former contract that we
It's-
like the former first round pick thing that we needed. Guess what? We'll
Right,
take
like
whatever.
like
we can
like T. Higgins, they struggle, they come out and they're out of the playoff contention because that AFC North is going to be just a monster, right? Maybe Joe Burrow gets another injury, maybe Jamar Chase holds in and doesn't wind up coming. But ultimately, if you get to week 6 or 7 and Cincinnati's not looking good, Cincinnati all of a sudden is going to move a guy like T. Higgins. Does that become a possibility? If that's a possibility, and I can move Minnesota's second round pick
for T Higgins. And then also
and now
get him
I've
to
got
agree to a
cap
contract.
room. Now I've got cap room where I can sign him.
Now we're talking about something.
Now I'm looking at that team and I'm like, okay, you're 4-2. You bring in T. Higgins. Got the meat of my schedule coming up to bat here. I've only got to survive long enough for Matt Milano to come back, and all of a sudden the Jets are fading, the Dolphins are fading. I just need to get into the playoffs and I can make some noise here. Like, yeah, I feel better about things. If I go through the entire season and I'm reliant on Sean McDermott's defense and Josh Allen being, just the guy he's been over the last 4 seasons, that's not enough for me, man. Like, that's not enough to win a game. If it was enough to win when push came to shove, they wouldn't have lost 13 seconds, right? Like, they wouldn't have lost the game with 13 seconds left. So I just think that if your strategy going into this season is what I've thought it's been for the longest time, which is just a reset year that they don't want to call a reset year, and it's just
retool.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it, right? Like, Josh Allen's good enough to get us
It's
8
still
wins.
fluid.
Our defense is going to get us a couple more wins.
It's still fluid
ball's-
because if it goes well,
Sure.
then now you have to look at, hey, we got to capitalize on this.
Sure.
And if you're a smart GM, you go, listen, these assets we have, we'll trade you our second round pick, not Minnesota's, but we'll give you our second round pick. We'll give you
Right.
that for T. Higgins because you're
I
probably
mean,
not
but
going to get that.
but realistically,
but the
right? Like, if
point
you can
remains.
sign T. Higgins long term,
the point
he's
remains.
every bit worth that Minnesota
Because
second round pick.
the guy you would
every
take
bit
in
of
the
worth.
second round is an unknown quantity.
Because you
whereas
know what you're going to
that
get in the
guy
second
plays
round.
NFL wide
You know what you get
receiver.
in the second round with that Minnesota pick?
Another
You get
T.
Keon
Higgins.
Coleman.
Who you get Keon?
Like that's the guy you take with that Minnesota pick, if that's what you're insistent on. So
Yes.
at the end of the day, if I could take Keon Coleman today for T. Higgins, would you make that move? If it was Keon Coleman for T. Higgins straight up?
And
Because
that's
what you
an
get for
question
that
to open up to
Minnesota
the crowd.
pick,
Guys, Keon Coleman for T. Higgins straight up right now. Most of you would do it, right? And that's the weird part of where we are in terms of roster construction right now.
Like, we joke about what I joke, and I'll say this to Paul and Mario because they were the ones that brought it up. They joke about Brandon Ayuk, right? Like, Brandon Ayuk deal, $30 million per year annual value. And they joke like he's the 4th best pass catcher on his roster. He's, the second best wide receiver on his roster. You guys wanted to trade for Brandon Ayuk like not 3 weeks ago. Would you trade Keon Coleman today for the opportunity to sign Brandon Ayuk to a $30 million a year deal? Because I would.
According to WGR, they're still wanting Ayuk, even though he's signed.
If you listen to Joe DiBiase,
That's a tough look.
which is a
That's-
tough
That's
listen.
a tough look.
Guys, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not listening to Joe DiBiase. That guy's fucking shot. All right, so we've walked through the roster. We've walked through all of the highs, the lows. What
So
we
half
think about
Dad
it.
says all day he
We've-
would make the move. Ryan says yes, but not the cap difference. So what I would say, Ryan, is if you would do Coleman today, Coleman for Higgins straight up with the cap difference, I'm not asking you to do Coleman for Higgins straight up. I'm asking you to do the pick that got you Coleman. So you get Higgins and Coleman, but you got to pay Higgins, right?
Hold
Like,
on. Is that yellow jacket included?
You know what?
Included.
I will personally buy T. Higgins his own yellow jacket if he wants, so he can match.
Yeah.
So they can do Twinsy Day.
We can go
for
to
Keon
Macy's
Coleman.
and just get him those discount jackets.
Yeah.
Ryan and I can afford that.
Yeah, like that season ticket holders unite. Buy T. Higgins a puffer jacket.
Guys, this has been fun. I'm happy that we got to walk through the roster together and just talk about our pros, cons, foibles, thoughts. But we've kept you here for an hour and a half, and you lunatics are still watching. I love it. I love it. I love that we get to come here and do this for you guys and that you show up for it. But for tonight, we got to get the hell out of here.
So I'm gonna plug it.
Here it is.
Yeah. So if you are interested in more debauchery, make sure you tune in to myself, Mario Granata, Paul Wineski on #sports. Give us a follow on YouTube as well. We join Drew periodically. Drew has me out when he has topics that he doesn't want to tackle on his own. He doesn't want to be the bad guy, so he brings me out to be the bad guy and say things like, well, if you can't afford to go to a football game, then you can't go to a football game. And Perry Pagula is a terrible owner. Drew brings me to those shows. But if you like that type of content, make sure you give me a follow at Ryan Lasal _RSN. Make sure you follow #sports because we got a lot of cool stuff coming up this season. I'm doing razor sharp picks with Joe. We're doing some betting, some gambling shows on Wednesdays. So make sure you tune in. We'll give you those.
Sir.
And then Mario and Paul love to make fools of themselves on YouTube. Drew makes a fool of himself too, but he still pretends that he's serious about things. But Mario and Paul lean into the crazy as well. So make sure you give us a follow as the season goes on. But always fun time joining Drew and Chris, and I appreciate them putting up with the nonsense that I bring to their show.
Guys, this has been fun, but we got to get the hell out of here. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. That's Ryan Lasal. And this has been your Rock Power Report.
This is terrible.